You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
It's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to Making Tracks, and a very special episode as myself and Mark Mulcaster head back to London Film and Comic Con, where we sat on the second stage with Eric Walker. Eric was the original Mace Tawani from Caravan of Courage and the Battle for Endor. We spoke all about the Ewok movies and much more besides. So here's myself, Mark Mulcaster and Eric Walker talking all about the Ewok adventures he had on stage at London Film and Comic Con.
I've just come off the main stage and interviewed Mike Edmonds, who was over in the Redwoods for Jedi.
Right.
And so that's an imposing place to be.
It is.
And there's a kid who's never seen those Redwoods to go there for the first time. That you just said how awe-inspiring it was. And that must have been really special because you couldn't film more in a Star Wars location. Maybe Finse for Empire when you're in the
Right.
But you can't film more like you're in Star Wars than being in the Redwoods, can you?
No, you can't. And even when you went in to do the scenes inside the Ewok hut, or we were on the main stage, where they had the big blue screen with all the... They really went the extra effort and built all the rocks and stuff. We're crawling up those steps to the Gorax lair.
Yeah.
It helps a lot, but the actors today, they're spoiled. When the ones working on The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, they have the volume, so they don't need to pretend anymore.
No, exactly.
So that's good for them. I wish I had it. But
I mean, did you see, like you mentioned the Gorak and stuff, did you see any pictures of the creatures that were in the film before?
They let us go. They were filming the Goraks in Cookie Bay on the other side, and they had another unit filming the Goraks, and it was played by John Berg. Was in the costume.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I was able to see what he looked like.
Yeah.
And they had this sound that they played, this roaring sound, so we could visualize what he sounded like.
Yeah.
So they let us hear that. But other than that, we were just making it all up, just pretending. So it was difficult, but
yeah.
If you don't, like I said, if I don't believe it, you're not going to believe it watching me.
Totally.
So
totally.
If you had to pick, like, your most favourite moment on set and probably the hardest thing you had to do on set, what would they be?
My favorite, funniest moment was when George Lucas was directing. It was during the reshoots. And he brought his daughter Amanda Lucas to the set. And we're filming the scene where we're coming out of... We just got all of the stuff that Logray gives us, the rock, the magic stick, all that stuff that he just gave us. And we rappel down, and Mace looks at his rock and says, "That's a stupid rock," and throws it away. Then Wicket picks it up for him. Mace doesn't know that. But Amanda kept saying, "Why is it a stupid rock, Eric? Why'd you throw the rock?" Like, right in the middle of the take. But, of course, we ignored her.
Yeah.
But that was a funny moment.
Yeah.
One of the hardest scenes to shoot was when I was in the Magic Pond.
Yes.
And I had, because they shot this in a swimming pool, and I had to swim underneath the deep end, and they had this like 6 or 8 inch piece of plexiglass that I could pound on, and that was hard. Swimming way underneath, holding your breath, and as long as you can, and pound on it. That was kind of difficult. And there was another scene, and there's another scene where Mace shoots up into the Gorak's cage to save his parents. They cut it out, but they actually shot me about 15 feet in the air.
Oh, wow.
So, but they wouldn't let me do where I landed the cage because they was afraid I would miss it.
Right.
So that they got the stunt coordinator did that part where I land on the cage.
Yeah. A less valuable kid to do it then. Yeah.
He gave me stunt pay for flying 15 feet in the air. He goes, and he gave me a stuntman's hat from the Stuntman's Association. It was pretty. His name is Mike Cassidy. I think, as the stunt coordinator. Good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think when we spoke one of the previous times, when the book that Mark alluded to, you were just sort of starting to talk about that project.
Yes.
And that's when you mentioned that Lucas had actually not returned to the director's chair on Phantom Menace, but really on Caravan. So being a Star Wars fan, as we say, and knowing your stuff, how did that feel? You're one of the first people to be directed by George Lucas at that point for like 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, for sure. And he didn't want anybody to know he was directing it. So I would tell people, and Lucasfilm would act like I didn't know what I was talking about.
Yeah.
They didn't want to admit that George went and directed.
Didn't fit the marketing, did it?
No, not just that, but I think it was too soon, and he had some other issues with Hollywood.
Yeah.
And that he was settling with the Directors Guild.
Yeah.
But he was an interesting director. He was very fast. They say, the only thing he gives an actor is, fast and intense. But he shoots that way. Right. He sets up the shots very quickly. He maps everything out. Everything is running like 100 miles an hour when he's on the set directing. And I learned this more later because I got into film editing, but I could tell George is such a genius that he's editing it while he's filming it in his mind already. And later he created that technology so he could change anything. So,
edit droid and all that.
Yes, which became Avid. Yeah. So it was great being directed by him. I even have the only thing I have from George signed is from that reshoot. And he wrote me a note on a card that said, "Thank you, Eric, for your great work on the reshoot," and he signed it. So I still have that card.
Hello, I'm Warwick Davis, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
And did you like that as an actor, the pace of it? Or did you want to be in that galaxy for as long as you possibly could? I guess you did, didn't you?
There's something good about the quicker pace, but especially if you're shooting action, then there's great stuff about being an actor's director when you need to get to an emotion like, I would rather have John Cordy direct me in the scene where Chukatrak dies than George, because you need to slow it down.
I see.
So they're both good.
Yeah.
For different reasons.
Yeah. That's an interesting thought, but I get what you mean. Yeah. And when the film came out, the reaction to it was instantly great, and it won Emmys, didn't it? I mean, it was an award-winning.
It was nominated for 2 Emmys. It won one Emmy. It was well received. The critics gave it a great review. In America, it was seen by 65 million people.
Huge
which
numbers.
Is hard. Which nowadays there's so much cable and so much to watch.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Almost nothing. And then overseas, I was checking the box office. It did okay in London. It was number 3 in France for the year. It was number 1 in Japan for the year. So it did pretty well.
I was lucky enough as a kid. I was 13 when it came out, so I saw it at the cinema. So you were 3.
I was 3, so I didn't get a chance, unfortunately. Yeah.
But I met someone today that said that was the first movie they ever saw in the cinema.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And their sister, it was her birthday, and she picked that movie. Wow. And I said, well, after he got a picture from me, I said, well, come here and take a selfie so you could show your sister and that you got a picture with me, so you could brag. So
it was such a treat, because when Jedi came out, we were all thinking, well, now he's winding. Star Wars is winding down,
right.
And then reading Bantha Tracks, the old fan club magazine, it announces there's going to be a TV movie event, special event. It was such a treat for the fans at the time.
Yeah, and he made the movies originally for his daughter Amanda Lucas, which is, when you think about that, how cool of that is to have a dad that could make movies for you because you like the Ewoks or whatever. He's a pretty cool dad, so in my book. But we were supposed to do 3. It was supposed to be a trilogy originally.
Okay.
We were signed to do 3 movies. I don't know why they didn't do the 3rd one. I know that it got to a script form, and there is a script somewhere at Lucasfilm for the 3rd Ewok movie, but I don't know what it was about. So.
That's fascinating. I've never heard that. That's interesting. Yeah.
I mean, but the Ewok movies, both of them are they have a very special place in the Star Wars kind of fandom and canon. I mean, we've only really had one release, haven't we, of them on DVD back in 2004. I mean, do you think it's time that they should be available to more people easily? Should they be on Disney Plus?
They are on Disney Plus.
Are they?
Yeah.
Okay, I stand corrected.
They just got released on Disney Plus last year. Actually,
that's right. It was only recently.
Okay.
And the fans demanded it to be released.
Yeah.
There was a petition that got all the signatures, and I have some friends that still work at Lucasfilm, and they said they noticed it. And
Oh, yeah.
that's one of the reasons why they released
put
it
it
on
on there.
Disney Plus. Yeah.
Okay.
There is a lovely little niche of that sort of era, and I think,
Exactly.
like you say, it's Caravan of Courage, Battle for Endor, Ewoks and Droids. You know,
Right,
they
the
very
cartoons
much-
too came out.
Yeah.
They very much sit together.
Exactly, because the cartoons were my first entry into Star Wars.
Yeah, the cartoons
So,
are
yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when, obviously, Caravan of Courage comes out, does great, you're in Battle for Endor, you're not in it for too long.
Yeah.
What was the story there? Did you ever figure out what...
I've heard different stories, but the story that most people that seems to be the real story is George and his daughter watched the movie Heidi,
Right.
where Shirley Temple's an orphan,
Yeah.
and he came up with the idea to make Sindel an orphan,
Right.
and kill the whole family, like the family. And originally, I was told I wasn't even going to be in it.
Right.
It was supposed to start with her being an orphan somehow, and they were just going to, I don't know how, with narration, they were going to talk about how somehow we died.
Yeah.
But I guess as they got into the process, somehow that was, no, wait a minute, we just had the family star in the whole movie, we got to explain something.
Yeah.
But could you imagine if George and George is like that. He's a very spur of the moment, spontaneous guy.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if they hadn't watched the movie Heidi the weekend before they started writing it?
That's an
you might have
interesting
got
point.
your third film.
Could have been that too.
Yeah.
When you you finished your time on screen in Star Wars, you never leave Star Wars, it's always part of your life. Was there any merchandise, was there any things you ever saw as the years went on that sort of caught your eye?
When personally or for the movies?
Oh, either.
Well, I'm a big Star Wars fan and geek, so I collect a lot as well. I like a lot of the Hot Toys stuff. I like a lot of the stuff they're doing currently with the new stuff coming out. When we were back to the movies I was in, I heard that Kenner did pitch them doing an action figure line, but George just said no. I don't know if it's that thing. If you get him at the right moment, he'll say yes. If you don't, he'll think, oh, that's a horrible idea. I'm doing this just as a TV movie. I'm doing this for my daughter. These movies. Why am I starting this merchandising line?
And he didn't do too bad out of the merchandise, did he?
No, well, of course he did great. I mean, if it was now, it would be a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I mean, Mace, look at all the different action figures that could come out of the 2 Ewok movies, even going to, they stole the Blurg and put them in Mandalorian. That's from the Ewok movies.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
I would love to see a Blur with Ewoks inside the wagon in the back. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Of course, we mentioned Mace. Noah would be a great action figure too.
Yeah.
Of course, Sindel would be a great action figure. The Night Witch. Well, she wasn't a Night Witch, Night Sister, but
kind of retconned it.
They kind of got the idea from that as well.
Yeah.
The Cheryl, played by Dame Sean Phillips, played her. And I did a convention with her. She's a lovely lady. Carl Strickton, who played the King Marauder.
Yeah.
He'd be a great action figure. But as far as action, I mean, we need more Ewoks.
You can never have enough Ewoks.
You never have enough Ewoks, and you never have kids in Star Wars, as far as I'm concerned. So.
And it's good to see that they're doing other stuff. This new Star Wars Young Jedi Adventures. It's nice to see stuff for kids.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, being a fan, you're going to observe and watch and consume as much as anybody else. Are you enjoying the current era of Star Wars?
I mean, there's stuff I love. There's stuff I don't like. I mean, but that's just about anything in life. But overall, I think Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are doing an awesome job. I think we're in good hands. I can't wait to see some of the newer stuff coming out, like the Arcolite or there's this. What's that new one with the kids?
Oh, Skeleton Crew.
Skeleton Crew.
Yeah.
That looks interesting. We'll wait and see.
Yeah.
And Mark mentioned the book again.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about the book, because I mean, you've got and had and still have such a unique opportunity to tell a story that so many people just wouldn't know. And
okay, so let's give you an update on the book. I've decided that if I don't find a publisher, I'm going to self-publish it at the end of this year.
Oh, brilliant.
So, but I've been waiting to try to find a publisher because I think it deserves more than me self-publishing it.
Yep.
But the book's called Growing Up in a Galaxy Far, Far Away. It was originally called Growing Up on Skywalker Ranch, but Lucasfilm contacted me and said I couldn't use that. So we came up with a new name. And it's basically my perspective of, as a kid, working in a Star Wars movie. And I literally break down each day we filmed, what it was like to film every scene. I also do other stuff about talk about other movies I was in before and after the Ewok movies. Like I was in Lesson Zero with Robert Downey Jr. A couple other movies I did, and
heck of a cast in that film.
Which one?
Lesson Zero.
Oh, Lesson Zero was a great movie. Yeah. I had more scenes, but stuff gets cut out.
That's Hollywood, isn't it? I guess.
It is.
Yeah. So self-publishing, the plan is to, if nothing else,
if
moves
nothing
on
else,
that.
it will be out. You could get it on Amazon. It's going to be the same name, Growing Up in a Galaxy Far, Far Away.
Yeah.
But we'll make sure we give everybody updates on it.
Good.
So you could get a chance to read it. Plus, it'll have a lot of behind-the-scenes pictures I took while we were making the movie. So.
Well, just on that topic, I mean, just speaking to Mike and Brian Wheeler earlier, you know, when they made Jedi, people would bring cameras on set. There's Polaroids and all sorts of stuff, and you allude to a similar thing. There's images. It was a looser environment in that sense because there wasn't an internet to share it on, was there?
It definitely was. In fact, there was one point where one of the production assistants got in trouble because they took us on a tour of ILM, and I was taking pictures of all the Indiana Jones miniatures and from
Temple of Doom.
Yeah, and stuff like that, and E.T. and all the different models and stuff, and you weren't supposed to do that. But they're not going to tell a 14-year-old kid not to take a picture.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I have hundreds of pictures that I could share.
You must be like a kid in a candy store. That must have been amazing.
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah.
And on your travels, doing events like this, talking to people about what you did, where's the coolest place that this has taken you?
I mean, to places like this. I mean, I live in Los Angeles. I'm coming to London to appear at a comic convention 40 years after I make a movie.
Yeah.
I've been to Germany a few times. I've been all over the United States, of course. So it's been pretty cool, and it's I'm humbled and I'm grateful. So it's always great to meet the fans and hear their stories.
Yeah. And tell us a bit. I know you're very into music. Tell us a bit about your music career.
My passion now is my music. I'm a composer. If you've heard of the group Tangerine Dream or Jean-Michel Jarre or Vangelis, my music's very much like that. I'm inspired. They're my people that inspired me. So I have 3 albums out that are instrumental.
Yeah.
Tangier Dream, which is like an allude to that. Universal Delight and Brand New Day. I was up for a Grammy for Brand New Day, actually. And then a friend told me, your music, I could sing to your music. So we made 3 albums and he sounds like David Bowie.
Oh, okay.
So I have 3 albums out now. So if you guys stream anywhere, Spotify, Apple Music, just type in Eric Walker and you'll see I have 6 albums out.
Being nominated for a Grammy, that's a big deal. That must have been incredibly satisfying.
It was very satisfying. I've been doing music since I was a kid, since in high school.
Yeah.
So it was definitely in. The way I compose is not only electronic, but it's also very orchestrational as well. So it could be, a lot of people told me my music sounds very like it could be in movies. So it would be great one day to even compose for a movie.
Absolutely.
So maybe that's on the bucket list next.
Yeah, add that to the tick list.
Add that, yeah.
Hi, this is Vivian Lyra Blair, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Of your time on specifically Caravan, that's the one we think of initially when we think of Mace. Is there a moment, was there a time, was there a second when as a kid you took a little look around and thought, good grief, this is, as a Star Wars fan, this is just awesome?
I think there was a scene where Sindel and I were running through the forest, and we were being chased by the Gorax's Pet Bora, and I'm firing my laser blaster. But on set, you don't see the laser thing because they throw that in later, but they still have the explosions and the squibs going on.
Okay.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's like that really gets you into a scene. You're running away and you go psh like that, and the squib and the sparks go off.
Yeah.
So it's like you're in a war zone.
Yeah.
Smoke and smoke effects. That moment was cool.
Yeah. you're making the film, you're making the show. I never quite know how to refer to it as a TV movie. We got it at the cinema, you see, so I think of it as a cinematic thing. It's a film. It's a film. Yeah. The music, you didn't hear you're not hearing the soundtrack when you're making the film, and it got that beautiful score that accompanied it.
Yes.
Some actors get the chance to go and see the scoring sessions see stuff.
I did not, but I understand they couldn't afford the London Philharmonic, so they used the Munich Philharmonic.
Yeah.
So it still is a real orchestra, and I think it's Peter Bernstein, right?
Yeah.
But the music was amazing.
Yeah.
And it was very. In fact, I think he used Wicked's theme a little bit in it as well. Yeah. We had no idea the music was going to be like that. No,
yeah, it was fantastic, wasn't it? And another question occurs. We never knew back in. I mean, of course, now we've got Legends and Canon and so on and so forth. So we kind of know where it sits now. But back in the day when it was a more fluid situation in terms of chronology and such. In your opinion, and I don't think they've ever really nailed it down, is Caravan of Courage set before Jedi or is it set after Jedi?
Well, when we were making Caravan of Courage, the producer, and I might have that on video somewhere, actually told us it takes place 150 years after Return of the Jedi.
Oh, wow, okay.
And he made a joke about how Ewoks live longer.
Yeah.
So even though Wicked's like over 150 years old, he's still a bratty teenager. He was like alluding to how we were being teenagers on the set.
Yeah.
Can you imagine 2 teenagers on a set to deal with? You know? But we still worked hard, even though we were that way. Then someone wrote a book in the expanded universe, like you're referencing, and then that writer, they put it, in between A New Hope and Empire, I think.
Yeah, Bill Savicek, I think.
I think that it's kind of sitting in that reign only because he wrote that book.
Right.
But I don't agree with that. I think it takes place after. Because that's why the Ewoks kind of know some basic, they're friendly.
That's right.
It makes sense that it's after. In fact, in Bantha Tracks, since you mentioned Bantha Tracks, Tom Smith talks about how it's after. And he says that there's an ATST.
That's right, the wooden carved one, isn't it?
On the table.
Yeah.
So the Empire, that already happened.
Yeah.
He said it in Bantha Tracks. So in my mind, it takes place after. And yes, the Ewok movies are canon. Straight up.
Fist bump.
Yep. Hell yeah.
How can they not be? The story's by George Lucas, and it's produced by Lucasfilm.
Exactly.
This shouldn't even be a discussion.
Underline, exclamation point. I totally agree.
And when they released it on DVD, it says Star Wars Ewok Adventures. I think that was George saying underline.
Yeah. I do not argue with a single syllable of what you just said.
But now apparently Disney's changed everything, so we don't know, right? I guess it's not Legends or something like that.
I think, I don't even know if it's that. I think they call it vintage. I think Disney was like a vintage thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's vintage.
That's a nice way of saying we're old.
But they should put the holiday special in with it. You see, they're just throwing them all in together.
That's the argument.
Well, yeah.
They did not make the holiday special.
That's right.
They only made the cartoon.
Nelvana,
They didn't produce it at all. We did a commercial. We filmed a commercial for the Caravan of Courage that never aired because George said, get it approved before you air it. And they had myself, Wicket, and Sindel. We walked into like an American Graffiti type diner and said, watch our show. And George wouldn't let it air. Why you putting my Star Wars characters in an American Graffiti diner?
Yeah.
They're part of Star Wars. So George axed that commercial. Someone needs to get a hold of it. I think Aubrey Miller's parents got a copy of it. But we need to get it one day. But yeah, so these were his movies, so that's the difference.
Well, thank you for giving us your time.
It was a pleasure.
I've wanted
Mark.
to speak to you properly for so long, so I'm pleased that me and Mark had a chance to do that.
Got to meet the 2 Marks.
Easy to remember. Everyone, give it up for Eric.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for listening to Making Tracks. If you want to be a part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com and be sure to comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds at Fanthatracks. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. Subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Fanthatracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mike Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Remember, tune in to Good Morning Tatooine. It's live Sunday evenings at 9 o'clock UK, 4 p.m. Eastern, and 1 p.m. Pacific on Facebook and YouTube and Twitch. And check out our Fanthatracks Radio Friday night rotation every Friday night at 7 o'clock UK time for new episodes of The Phantom from Down Under, Planet Leia, Olympia, Desert Planet Discs, Start Your Engines, Collecting Tracks, Cannon Fodder, and special episodes of Making Tracks, and every Tuesday at 7 o'clock UK time for your weekly episode of Making Tracks.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Collecting Tracks.